Well, I'm just reading a really interesting new book on political philosophy. It's from a U.S. perspective, saying, the ancient Greeks wouldn't recognize what's going on right now as a real democracy. But of course, the context was different, small city-states, and everybody knew each other. But there's also the large element that, at least certainly in Canada and the United States, there's an unhealthy influence from large corporations, and a working assumption that any political party's main goal is to increase corporate profits instead of working towards the public good. So that's, and even the NDP that has a tradition that comes from social democratic roots is aping this kind of talk that there's not enough for economic growth in what's going on. So yeah, Canada though, in the very specific moment of how democracy has unraveled in the last, well, certainly, let's just take from when Stephen Harper became Prime Minister. Things weren't great before either, but you've all heard, I think most of you have heard this rant from me before. I mean, increased partisanship in the House of Commons to the extent that members of Parliament are told not only how to vote in committee, which used to be a place where members of Parliament could exercise personal judgment. They basically, legislative committees, I used to love it because it was as if they checked their partisanship at the door and you saw people really work together. Legislative committees now, looking at bills, not only do the MPs, or certainly the Conservative MPs, I get the sense the NDP Liberals too, are told how to vote. The Conservative MPs are also told every single word of what to say. Everything is read off cue cards and briefing notes. And the approach also, witnesses who come before committee used to see witnesses come before a committee. I used to be a witness before a committee. You generally get 15 minutes to put forward your brief, and you get at least 20 minutes to a half an hour of questions, one person at a time, one NGO at a time, to put forward positions on issues. And what Harper's doing now is he wants to be able to say, well, this bill had X hundred of witnesses. So what they do is they bring forward 5 or 6 at once, give them each 2 minutes to say something, and then the ones who are putting forward a view that's critical of Harper's position are treated to the worst abuse. It's almost like, before the House Armed Services, the anti-American, what was it called? The Committee for Un-American Activities of Joseph R. McCarthy. You could tell the way the witnesses are being questioned isn't actually to find out what their views are, because they've been brought at taxpayer expense all the way to Ottawa to give expert opinion on legislation, and they're generally treated like hostile witnesses who should have been in jail rather than showing up at this committee. So it's gotten quite bad at the committee. It's very bad in the House of Commons. The hope is to get more people voting and to get more really good MPs elected who are not beholden to this political party structure. So there's a few private members, well, there's a private members bill that I'm putting forward, but I think one of my colleagues in the Conservative Party will be able to get the same bill forward first, and I'm really hoping that this will happen coming from a Conservative. But one of the key reforms I want to get through is to take away from the leader of political parties the obligation, the right to sign the nomination papers of every candidate, because that gives the leader of the party a club to use to threaten both candidates, in my case, other members of Parliament. And certainly Stephen Harper uses threats quite a lot to keep people in line, but so do the other leaders. So we have to get, Harper's punishments are more extreme. Witness Helena Kerkis. But members of Parliament pretty much know they have to toe the line. So there's a lot that can be done to rescue democracy. We still have the capacity to do it as individuals, but the system itself right now in Ottawa doesn't look much like a democracy. It looks entirely like one-man rule by a dictatorship.